What's up, you guys? Godzilla fan freaks coming at you today with another figure review, and today we are going to be reviewing the Batman Arkham Origins Deluxe Killer Croc figure. Just get straight on into it with the box here. Very nice big size, deluxe size box for Killer Croc here. You got Arkham Origins Killer Croc action figure, and he's from Series 2. Very nice open window here at the top. Little tiny bat symbol window here. And then on the sides, very nice pictures of Batman from the game. And then on the back, you kind of don't have a write-up about Killer Croc, but kind of just, based on the video game characters from Batman Arkham Origins. And then you got the other figures that were released in this line. And there's Croc himself in the middle. But other than that, very nice, big, deluxe-sized box. Now, onto the figure itself. Here is the Arkham Origins Killer Croc figure. Now, one thing I will point out about this guy is that he's much more difficult to get standing than the other Killer Croc figure from Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. That one, he seems you can get him to stand a little easier. This guy, you have to really work with his legs and his ankles to get that, and his top side of his body to kind of get him to be able to stand okay. And even right now, he's not standing perfectly great. If I were to give him a little bit of a nudge or anything like that, he'd topple over very easily. So this guy is a little difficult to stand. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about getting him, or or if you have him or something, you might have to have something propped up behind him just for safety. You really wouldn't want him toppling off a shelf or something like that. He is a very heavy figure too, by the way. But let's get straight on into this figure with paint job. Paint job is very nicely done. I do like the greenish bluish colors for Croc here, as well as kind of like the dirty creamy white, for his main body skin color. But I really do dig the bluish green color for his main kind of like skin and armor and all that stuff. Very nicely done. His eyes are a very nice gold with black pupil slits in them, and then of course his teeth, from what is there, is white. The bandages on his arms are a very dirty, kind of like a dirty white, kind of grayish color, both on his hands and his feet, and they both have kind of like spots of blood here and there. His claws on his hands and his feet are a very, very dark, kind of almost smoky blackish gray color. His belt is, of course, black, and then you got silver for the buckle. And then his pants kind of changed in the game every now and then. I want to say I kind of maybe would have preferred when he had like the inmate kind of pants on that were kind of orange and everything like that. But these pants that he's wearing here still have a good nostalgia factor to Croc. They're pretty much the pants that he had when he was, working for carnivals, and he was kind of like the freak show of the carnivals and whatnot before he became, a thug and a criminal. So it's kind of cool that they had these pants on him. The pants are pretty much a really dark brown with kind of like a little, not super red highlights, but they're kind of like a pinkish red highlights of lines going down them. And then, of course, you got the suspenders here, which are kind of like that brick red color, and then silver for the buckles. Overall, fantastic paint job for Croc. Now, as far as detail goes, this is a younger version of Croc, and I want to say, the detail is great. I love all the detail on his, scaly skin and his Croc, kind of armor-looking skin and all that stuff, especially on the back. The back is just amazingly well done, as well as the front. I want to say the face is very nicely done. He has a very nice kind of, evil skirmish for his smile and all that stuff. The hands are both open. That's very nicely done. All the bandages and everything, very nicely well done and detailed. Again, you got all the wrinkles and stuff in the pants and everything like that. Very nicely done. All the muscle tone in his arms, very nicely well done. He's been hitting the gym really good. And again, just all the detail all the way around for his skin and whatnot are just great. It just looks fantastic, and it's a beautifully well done figure. I will say that. The only thing that kind of takes away from his sculpt is pretty much, I was mainly, when I got this figure, I really wasn't looking at the one point, but I was more or less looking at the joint here. You can really see this seam here, kind of like in his abdomen area. You can kind of really see that seam, and that doesn't take away from the sculpt as much as the legs do right here, to where his legs attach to his hips. The way they did the legs here, I will say, depending on how you have him posed, you are going to see, you know, like these seams and everything, you know, they do kind of, as you can see, it's like, it is kind of like an ugly way they kind of did the legs. But, I mean, I guess maybe if they would have did a little bit more work on the sculpt, maybe they could have did this a little better. But, I mean, the way that these gaps are and everything like that around where the legs attach to his hips, it's kind of really ugly in my opinion. But still, as long as you kind of have him in kind of a standing pose and everything like that, it's not going to show up all that much. And since we're going into, you know, joints and seams, we'll move on to articulation. Articulation, pretty much, you know, he has a lot more articulation than the other Croc figure, I will say. His head can look up and he can look down to a certain extent, so he can look up and down. He can kind of, you know, turn his head, you know, side to side at a little bit of a pivot, and of course he can kind of, you know, turn it like that somewhat and everything. No jaw articulation, which is kind of a little bit of a downer since it is a, you know, a Killer Croc figure. You would think that he would have a jaw articulation like the last Croc figure. But with no articulation in the jaw, I will say it doesn't really take away from the figure all that much. I think it really keeps the head sculpt together and it just really looks nice and sharp. His arms, of course, you can move them forwards and backwards here at the shoulder, as well as outwards a little bit. He does have really bulky shoulders, so it's kind of hard to get his arms to move outwards. Now I can't even get to move back inward, but you can get them forward and backwards and outwards like so. He has a, you know, a bicep swivel, and then of course he has the elbow joints, which don't really, you know, go in at 90 degrees, but you know, you can get some very nice bends out of them. And both of his wrists will, you know, turn, and then of course they have a hinge on them to where you can get them to tilt upwards. Or if you want them to curl in more, you can also get that as well. So very nice articulation in the arms. Again, he has this little bit of an ab crunch, and you can get him fairly, you know, fairly very well hunched over and whatnot. So you know, you do got a good ab crunch joint here, and then you can kind of get him to tilt backwards a little more and everything like that, and that'll help when you're getting him to look upwards and everything like that. It'll help him look higher just a little bit more. And then he does have, you know, a waist joint that you can get to turn side to side and whatnot. And then, of course, here are his legs. You can get his legs to move forward and backward, and they move outwards. It looks like they would move outwards more, but I think that's about as most as you're going to get out of the legs, moving to the outwards to the side. His knees are very hard and stiff, but you can get a nice, very knee bend out of them, but not too much. And then his ankles, you can kind of tilt downwards and kind of tilt a little more high up, but not much. And then he does have a little bit of an ankle pivot swivel, but it is very stiff and hard to move. I will say that much. The joints on these DC collectibles, especially the big guys like Killer Croc, the joints have always been really hard and stiff to move around. But that about does it for articulation. Now we'll move on to sizing. Sizing here with one of the Batman figures that I have, just the normal animated Batman here. I want to say sizing is actually okay with this, just because this is a younger Croc, so he would have been a little bit smaller. And in the video game, he is only about this much taller than Batman. So I will say sizing with this Batman figure here is actually very nice and very well done. Perfect sizing there. Next, I'll size him up with my favorite DC superhero, Aquaman. Here he is next to Aquaman. Again, I want to say that would be good sizing right there. Not bad at all. Pretty much the same, you know, size comparison with Batman, other than, you know, the trident and everything like that. So sizes up well with Aquaman. And now to size him up with his older self. Here is the Arkham Asylum and Arkham City Croc. Now they are pretty much about the same size, actually. If you get this Croc to tilt upwards a little more, he kind of does have just a little bit of a height advantage. But I will say, I want to say the sizing on these two Croc figures now, this is where it kind of gets off if you're really a sizing and scaling type, you know, freak, I guess. But, you know, because this Croc, he's a younger Croc, so it makes sense that he's a little smaller and everything like that, and it shows that in the video game. And then once you get to Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, Croc was huge. I mean, he had to have been taller, you know, he had to have been over 10 feet, I'd imagine. And, you know, in Arkham Origins, he's supposedly like 8 or 9 feet tall. I can't remember. But it's like in Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, Croc had to have been like, it almost looked like he could have been like 15 feet tall. So I mean, the sizing for the, comparing the Croc wise is off. I will say that much. And there's a lot more I'd like to go into with both of these figures. And my buddy Jake Dolan gave me the idea of maybe, that way this review doesn't turn into a huge long review. I can just split it up, and I can eventually do in the future. I'm most likely going to do a video to where I'm going to compare these two guys. Detail, paint job. I'm going to just compare the crap out of both these figures. And I actually look forward to doing that video, but I don't know when I'll do it. It will be sometime in the future. Probably won't be the next video, but, whenever I get around to it. But that'll be a fun video that I look forward to doing. I'm just going to compare both of these guys side by side, everything by everything. But for scaling wise, I will say I believe that this is probably off. But both of these guys look great next to each other nonetheless. I have them both next to each other on the shelf, and they look fantastic. I'm glad to have a young version of Croc and an older version of Croc. It is kind of cool to have both these video game characters on the shelf, side by side. And that about wraps it up for this Croc figure, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my review here on the Arkham Origins Killer Croc. And I think that's about it. I don't think I missed anything. So to sum this up, you guys, we are Godzilla Fan Freaks. Like always, please comment, like, and subscribe. And we will see you guys in the next figure review. Thank you for watching.